on the floor of the Senate right now. That is State Senator Carlos Guillermo Smith, Democrat from Orlando, asking questions of Senator Don Gates, Republican from Crestview, discussing the impact of the Supreme Court decision that came out today, also discussing some of what they heard in the Senate Rules Committee yesterday. All of this going on the Senate floor, coming about an hour after the Florida House of Representatives voted to approve the new congressional map by an 83-28 vote. Joining us live now to talk about this is State Representative Anna Eskamani, a Democrat from Orlando, voted against this new congressional map just a little bit ago. Representative Eskamani, we appreciate you joining us this afternoon here on Fox 35 News Plus.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and I appreciate you streaming from the Senate floor. It's important for voters to understand what's taking place in their state capital, especially in this unprecedented situation of mid-decade redistricting.
I want to get your reaction to what you heard on the House floor today and the eventual the vote and the results. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, let's paint the picture for the everyday Floridian. Basically, Governor Ron DeSantis is shoving down the throats of the voters maps that do not reflect the Fair District amendments. Remember, Florida is very unique compared to other states. Voters approved over a decade ago a constitutional amendment that created two new specific clauses around the drawing of maps, that those maps cannot be drawn to favor one political party over the other, and they also have to respect different minority groups. So we have a different set of standards that the voters approved a decade ago that are being just blatantly ignored in the drawing of the maps that were basically given to us after they were leaked to national media outlets. And of course, the way these maps look when you break it down by party is that it eliminates 4 Democratic congressional seats and it creates instead a 24-4 breakdown, 24 Republican, 4 Democrat. But again, we did not see those maps until after they were released to the media, which is really unheard of because according to the state constitution, it's the job of the legislature to draw maps every 10 years. And in this case, you have the governor and his team hand drawing maps. And of course, you have them being given to us with very little notice and no time for public feedback or public insight. This map was given just one committee hearing in both chambers, and now it's on the floor. And of course, what is really striking to me is how during the committee meeting, it wasn't the bill sponsor that answered questions. Right now you're watching Senator Don Gates answer questions about a bill that he sponsored. In committee, it wasn't the senator or the representative, it was the governor's staff. So the governor's staff took questions on the map. And of course, the governor's staff is not on the House floor. And so candidly, the bill sponsor could not answer most of our questions. We did ask questions. Unfortunately, in the Florida House, we have what's called structured debate. So we're only given 30 minutes to ask questions compared to the Senate, who has a limited time. And so in our case, that process already was completed. We've already voted. But it was very disappointing to not only see the process of how this is supposed to engage with the legislature and the public every 10 years, how that was just totally ignored and tossed to the side, but also the fact the bill sponsor could not even answer basic questions about this map should really cause alarm for everyone.
With the Supreme Court decision coming out this morning as well on the Louisiana v. Calais case that has been talked about and kind of anticipated, do you believe that this is something that should have been put off to kind of further look at the ramifications of that?
Absolutely. In fact, the Democratic leader, Representative Fentress Driscoll, did ask for a recess so that we would have time to look at that decision. As you noted, it came out as we're on the House floor debating this bill. That recess was denied on the House side, but it will absolutely impact not just Florida, but states across the union. This is ignoring precedent. It is pulling back on what have been known as key protections that we have abided by from the Voter Rights Act. And so it will have that effect. I do want to note that the protections that we really focused on in our debate against these maps center on the state constitution. So voters need to understand, and Floridians should be aware, that every state process is different. I've gotten a lot of questions from everyday Orlandonians around, why am I not allowed to vote on this map? Virginia, California voted. Why am I not voting on this map? And I want to provide that clarity. that every state does this process differently. So many blue states, in an effort to pull the map making process away from bias and politically motivated politicians, have created these third party approaches. They've tried to pull the map making process away from the legislature due to just ethical concerns, because it's never been a good idea to allow politicians to draw their own maps, period. But of course, red states never really did that. They wanted to hold that power within the hands of the politicians. And so voters are not going to have a say on this. These maps are going to, assuming that the senators will vote to proceed, which I will note several Republicans did vote no in committee yesterday. So I think it will be a tight vote in the Senate today, if not maybe a defeat or a tie. But I suspect they'll probably have the votes to pass. It'll be close. Once it passes the Senate, this will be sent to the governor's desk and he will sign it. And then you could expect a lawsuit in state court to be filed shortly thereafter.
I found it interesting that no Republican members of the House rose to speak about this in debate or defend the maps in any way, despite the many challenges and criticisms that you and your fellow Democrats levied against it. Did that stand out to you at all, or did you expect to hear from Republicans on the House floor today?
That's a really great and insightful question. Two thoughts. Was I surprised? No, because they can't defend these maps. I mean, they just can't. There's no justification for these maps beyond doing what Governor Ron DeSantis and President Trump want you to do. These maps are not based in the state constitution, the U.S. Constitution. These are politically motivated maps to give a partisan edge. And so how do you defend that after you took an oath to uphold the state constitution, U.S. Constitution? So I think that's not a surprise to me. I will also add that many of my Republican colleagues don't want to get involved in litigation. And the second you speak on these maps, you will be pulled into litigation. I am preparing to be deposed in lawsuits. I'm preparing to be a witness in lawsuits. It's a reality that when you fight on these policies, or if you support these policies, and lawsuits are filed, even if you're not a plaintiff, you tend to get pulled into them. And in fact, I was a witness. I was deposed to be a witness in the lawsuit on the 2022 maps. And so I suspect that for many Republican colleagues, they, one, don't have the words or justification to defend these maps, but two, they also are trying to avoid getting pulled into what could be a multi-year legal battle on these maps.
You think that's just inevitable at this point?
Correct. Yes. Litigation is coming for sure. What its outcome will be is hard to tell. We know that the courts, the makeup of the courts have changed dramatically in the last decade. We know that, of course, interpretation of state constitution and now federal constitution and the policies like the Voter Rights Act are different. So I don't have a crystal ball to know what will happen, but I know for certainty that you will see litigation filed shortly after this is signed into law.
All right. Representative Anna Eskamani, we appreciate you joining us here on Fox 35 News Plus today.
Thank you for having me.